Okay, let's go back to the power issue now. China donating, and I want to pick up on that word in a moment, hundreds of millions of rands to help South Africa deal with its energy crisis. Over 500 public facilities are set to benefit, so that's part of the framework, we're told. But we all know often money in this country doesn't reach its intended destination. Yes, we can dive into the general sphere of money vanishing, but I want to focus on these contracts, these donations, these agreements. Executive Director at Corruption Watch, Karam Singh, joining us this morning. Karam, hello, good to have you with us. And I need to ask your thoughts on this word donation. I don't buy this. I've never believed there's such a thing as a free lunch between governments, especially when there's this much money involved. Do you agree or disagree?
Yes, Gareth. I think your skepticism is justified. The devil's often in the detail in these agreements, but it seems as if in the sphere of international affairs and relations, there's generally some kind of a quid pro quo, whether it's clearly stated in the documents or otherwise. So I think we're right to be skeptical about around the term donation.
And I've no doubts as well, the skepticism extends to Corruption Watch as well. What is your concerns? I'm sure we all sat back a little bit surprised, choking on our popcorn, watching bricks when we heard about the amount of money. What is your concern as Corruption Watch?
The concern is always being able to follow the money trail and to be able to understand exactly what kind of benefit is going to be accruing to the South African state. Is this going to be a transfer of funds? What kind of account is it going to go into? What are the good governance protocols in place to ensure that that money is spent appropriately and that it doesn't get siphoned off or looted by politically connected people? Now, if I look at this statement around the support from the Chinese on this particular issue, it seems as if the funds are going to go directly into equipment, into generators, power supply vehicles, off-the-grid PV energy supply systems, whatever that means exactly. If we're actually talking about actual equipment, then it should be easy or somewhat easier to then sort of line that equipment up with what the investment is in terms of the agreement. It sounds like, that would be something that would be, in theory, easier to track than if it was an actual, transfer of funds. So, possibly in this case, we will be able to follow what the agreement says and then actually translate, see how that translates into actual equipment on the ground, as you said in your introduction, to support, various public facilities remaining on the grid, in situations of load shedding.
Yeah, most importantly of those, I think there's always a tension around hospitals, schools, police stations, courthouses. I know has also been a bit of an issue, Karam. So I imagine when they say public facilities, that's going to form part of that. I want to disclose, I haven't seen the list of the public buildings, but I'm sure it falls within that framework. Hospitals, schools, police stations, courthouses as well. So what does that kind of transparency look like in your world? What should that look like? Apart from being able to read the contracts, how does Karam Singh and Corruption Watch want to see this laid out so we don't have to have an interview again asking where the money has gone? How does it look in your world?
I think you really hit the nail on the head when you use the word transparency. So I think up front, one would want to see that the agreements that actually support, the documents that actually support these agreements are publicly available, that we can scrutinize them. And then I think it's important that, whether it be through the whatever the frontline department is, whether it's DIRCO, whether it's Department of Trade and Industry, whether it's the new kind of energy minister, that they keep the public abreast with actual updates, when this equipment arrives, that we're actually able to inspect it, able to see it. They can say, this is the equipment that's arrived as a result of the agreement with the Chinese. This is where this equipment is going to be utilized at these hospitals, in these provinces, in these municipalities. So, it's really, the onus really then is upon government to communicate effectively to the public. And in many ways, we're asking government at this stage to over-communicate because there's been so little transparency, so little communication from government that's actually where the skepticism emerges and where, the slippages occur and where the money gets looted. When we just, there's a lot of fanfare when the agreement's signed, and then following that up, we hear very little. So we're going to need that flow of information about how this donation, how this support is actually playing out in practice.
I would contend as well, perhaps, Karam, that they always say that communication's a two-way street, correct? I would suggest in a case like this, it's actually three ways. You're saying that government needs to be communicating to the public needs to communicate back to government, South Africa's government. I would suggest as well, there also needs to be communication directly to South Africa's public from China as well, because no doubt the Chinese media are watching this. They can see your criticism. They can see concerns from other parties. They must, as a country, as a party in China, also be looking at this going, look, we don't want to give you the money as South Africa's government when your country clearly thinks you're going to go and lose it or squander it or it's going to vanish into the ether. What about the China side? How could they, should they, would they get some transparency from government as well? They might have more leverage in power.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really interesting angle. You said up front that there were doubts about whether this really was a donation or whether there's some kind of a quid pro quo in terms of the support that the Chinese give. I mean, internationally, the Chinese don't necessarily have the best record when it comes to issues that we're talking about, issues around anti-corruption, around transparency, around good governance. So, in the scheme of things, 167 million rand is not a lot of money to the Chinese. I think it's a fraction of a kind of development assistance that we've seen from other countries over the years. So I don't know if the expectations that you place upon the Chinese to be the ones to track this money and to ensure that that good governance flows from these funds is necessarily a realistic expectation, given the historical precedent of this one.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I think there's actually three players in this game at the moment. I'm curious to see how the Chinese want to track the money they're giving away. It's like your mom giving you the credit card when you go to the shopping centre. She wants to know what you've spent it on. She wants to know what you've bought. Karam, thank you as always. Good to have you with us. Karam Singh, always good to take time out of the morning to hear from the Executive Director at Corruption Watch.